Hi there, this is Lopa Nudrin, and today's topic is pull yourself together. There's a words you don't hear very often from a Buddhist teacher, am I right? At least not in public, not in your general talks, but I have the courage, so I'm going to do this because I've been thinking about this in regards to myself. It's currently, if you're watching this later, what is this, July of 2021, kind of all runs together, doesn't it? Um, and I'm in the United States, and we are in a certain place in our pandemic recovery. Maybe you're watching from another country where it's just getting bad, or it's been bad for this whole time. It's not getting better. You don't have access to vaccines and so forth. But at any rate, this global experience, except for a few countries of the world, has been going on for a year and a half, year and a quarter, right? So I'm reminded of a movie I saw in 1983, and I wish it was readily available on the internet. There are ways, but it's not so easy to see. And it was a enactment, a dramatization of Jacobo Timmerman's story called "Prisoner Without a Name, Cell Without a Number." Isn't that a great name? It's a little memoir of his experience in a South American prison, and he was thrown into for he was a very political person for expressing unpopular political positions unpopular with the government, and also he was Jewish, so he had two strikes against him. There was anti-Semitism in the military at that time. So that's that movie, all these years later, 20, 30 years later, 40 years later, 40, almost 40 years later, oh my gosh, stuck with me. One scene stuck with me that was just shocking. And that was, he was down in solitary confinement in a, terrible prison. And he was been in there for months, and he was completely dilapidated, and his hair was, his beard was like this, and he was, completely deconditioned, and his lie, as I would be in that experience, completely let myself go. And finally, they let a rabbi come in and see him. And I'm not sure he knew this fellow before, but the rabbi came in, and he started, and Mr. Timmerman started saying, "Oh, Rabbi, you wouldn't believe what they've done to me. They did this and they did that. So I don't have food. Tell everybody there's rats in my cell." Whatever. I can't remember the exact thing. And the rabbi listened for a minute, and they said, "Hold on a second. You need to pull yourself together, buddy. You completely, look at you. You completely let yourself fall apart. I'm not going to talk to you and listen to all this junk until you get some exercise and clean yourself up, because this is not pretty what I'm seeing here." I mean, my God, what nerve, you know? What powerful rabbi to come in and tell this guy exactly what he didn't want to hear. Am I right? So it sounds cruel, right? But it turned out it was just the medicine that he needed at that time. So he started doing push-ups, and he cleaned himself up as best he could, and um, got his dignity back. And this is what we need to do. We need to get our dignity back. And I know, as I was telling that story, another story came to mind. I used to be a nurse working with disabled kids long ago. And I would go to school with the kids in wheelchairs, and keep an eye on them, make sure they didn't die in school, give them the medicines, and just be there, because they were very fragile. When the fragile thought, there was one kid, I don't know, 9 maybe, and he had cerebral palsy, never been toilet trained. He was getting big. Maybe he wasn't 9. I don't know, 8 maybe. And they were working with him on this. with a whole team of people. There's a whole cadre of people that are assigned to kids who have special needs. And I was, I'd try to put him on the toilet, and he'd start screaming and crying, and I thought, what can I do? I took him off, and then, like his teacher knocked on the door and came in there and said, Mr. Smith, what is all this crying going on? You need to pull yourself together. Are you like a big baby? What is this? Get your act together, young man. Do you want to spend your whole life not being able to go to the bathroom? On the toilet? What is this? And I was like shocked. Again, I've been so nice. I was trying to accommodate him and make it gently, encourage him to get on there. This woman came in. Next thing you know, he shut up all the tears and sat on that toilet and did what he needed to do. So this is the message. I saw somebody come on, this broadcast and then quickly go to another channel, to the nice Dharma teacher channel. I am the nice Dharma teacher, but I've been talking to myself this way. Yudrin, the pandemic's been going on for over a year now. You've let yourself have your vegan cheesecake and ice cream. You've laid in bed in the morning, way past sunrise. You've, all this sort of coddling of myself during a time, where there was grief, sadness. We've all had it. Hard time this year, most of us, 99% of us. I'm no different. So I'm just trying to say to myself, come on, Yudrin, pull yourself together. And so if you came here for that message, I'm going to say, if you let yourself go during this last year, pull yourself together. And we're going to, in a Dharma sense, let's talk about what the great masters of the past came from. Actually, I was reading a quote by Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, the great Tibetan Lama. But we'll get to that. Just hang in there for the whole half hour and we'll get there. And first of all, I want to quote Dudjom Rinpoche, my great hero, one of my great heroes. He said, to put it simply, from the moment you enter the Dharma, the sacred Dharma, and become a Dharma practitioner, your inner attitude and outer conduct should far surpass those of an ordinary mundane person. This is from one of the great Tibetan Lamas of the 20th century. So, you take refuge in the Triple Gems and you bring up, your conduct, view, meditation, and conduct, and you don't sink down. Or if you sink down, you pull yourself back up again. This is what we need to do. So, as the saying goes, he says, an old Dharma saying, the sign of true learning is a peaceful temperament, and the sign of having meditated is fewer afflictions. Well, many people these days in the West, where we're new to Dharma, we think, oh, what's Buddhism about? Oh, peace and love. But actually, peace and love are probably universal religious qualities, and there's many, think of the Quakers. Think of the Jains and the Sikhs. They all embrace peace and love. They're good people. But we have a very specific path as Buddhists, followers of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The sign that our practice has not yet come to completion. I'm not saying that to make grieving people feel bad. If you've had a terrible loss this year, you have to grieve, and it's not going to be a time when you're going to be able to spend many hours meditating. But even in your grief, you don't hurt any sentient beings, right? Help sentient beings as much as you can, even when you're just at the end of your rope. And then when the time comes and your grieving is lifted, as it always does in a year, somewhat, 2 years, 3 years, better. There'll be more moments of happiness, time when you're normal if you've lost someone someone very close to you. And you've got to embrace those times and really raise up a level of practice and, dare I say it, self-discipline. One of the 6 paramitas of the Bodhisattva yana, the way of the great enlightened warriors who, so to speak, who aspire to attain enlightenment and bring all sentient beings along with them, each and every one equally. Where was I going with that? I got so excited. Oh yes, it's in the paramitas. We have discipline is one of them. Boy, that's an unpopular topic. You know my video on discipline probably got fewer views than any other video I have on YouTube. Discipline and perseverance are two of the qualities of a bodhisattva that as we're perfecting ourselves along the path. So I want to say Buddha had a schedule. You know, he had you can, especially in the Theravadan traditions, you can hear all about the time, the way he got up in the morning, how he, practiced, when they walked into town and went for alms rounds, when they came back, when they had their next teaching session, when they had a practice session. There was order. So we need to have order in our lives as much as possible. I know if you have young children, there'll always be an element of chaos, but many of the great, even, I'm saying even, I'm female lamas, but what I mean is, in Tibetan society, child rearing was a female responsibility, largely. And the family is very important, and of course, fathers played a big, beautiful role. But, it was a traditional society. So, even under those circumstances, female lamas like Jetsun Kushala, she raised children, and she practiced like a hecker. What was they say in Zen, like your hair is on fire? She practiced thoroughly, and how'd she do that? She got up really, really early in the morning. So Buddha had a schedule. Pull yourself together. So Dujin Rinpoche's instructions for practitioners was like this. You set your alarm. They didn't have alarms, but there was someone would go around and ring chimes. Okay, well before the sun came up, and of course you'd have to go to the bathroom. And in our case, of course, we have to get a cup of coffee or tea, right? Then you start your foundational practices. Now, for us, this is called ngundro, so literally our preliminary practices. And most Tibetan Buddhist practitioners do these every morning. But whatever is foundational between you and your teacher, whatever is the structure, the container for covering all the bases of practice, you need to do that right away, straight away, before you brush your teeth. There's no law about brush. They didn't, but what he said was like, you do this first. And also, if you're practicing deity practice, like a Buddha practice, like Tara Chenrezig or Guru Rinpoche, you do that after your nundro. And then you go to the bathroom, clean yourself up. There wasn't any bathroom per se. There was a bathroom, but you know what I mean. There was no running water, no clocks. Imagine all this without running water or clocks. How much harder they had it to accomplish these things in the morning. And they had animals. Do you think your cats are unruly? Try dromo and goats and sheep. So then you feed the animals, and take care of the kids. However, obviously, if you're a parent, you have your own schedule. And take them outside if they need to go outside, bring them back. And then get on with your day, study. And of course, we're going to be working people, most of us. So go and do your work, do what you need to do. Then in the evening, there's a closing practice. Whatever that is in your tradition, you know what it is. But in our tradition, there are Dharma polish or Dharma protectors practices to do. Of course, we might bring meditation into our daily practice as well, Dzogchen, Mahamudra, etc. But at night, or at least afternoon, if you poop out at night, you have to do them in the afternoon. You have to do your Dharma protectors practice. It's not required if you haven't completed your nundro. Probably ask your lama. And you have your own in Zen or Theravada. You know what your routine, you know what you're supposed to be doing, right? So pull yourself together. It's time to get doing it. It'll make you feel better, actually, as a side effect. And then, you have to be really aware how you're going to sleep. I know as well as anybody, believe me, I'm talking to myself about this, Netflix at night, okay? Even if you're watching Netflix in bed at night or whatever, please turn it off before you go to sleep and do your sleep practice, right? I'm sure in your tradition you have a special sleep practice. Ours is we lie a certain way, and we remember our teacher, we remember our highest Buddha, in our case in the Nyingma tradition, we think of that the second Buddha, Padmasambhava. We remember, we bring Dharma to mind and really absorb ourselves in that, have some kind of visualization. There are official ones. And we go to sleep without really going to sleep in a really light kind of way. We move into sleep. Obviously, this is a special practice, and, you'd have to get that instruction from your teacher exactly how to do it. Ours is really simple, actually. In the foundational practices that I'm doing, the practice of the night, it's like you have a refuge tree, right? A visualization of all the main figures in your lineage, or condensed into one or two figures, and then going up to a Buddha, right? And then they're often on a tree with four different branches in different directions, or maybe they'll just say a wish-fulfilling tree like that. You go and you put a pillow down next to that tree, and you lay your head down, and you're aware of this whole lineage right there above you while you sleep. Isn't that beautiful? Very simple, not very esoteric, but it uplifts your mind. Otherwise, you're going to wake up feeling like crap. Am I right? You go to sleep, you think it doesn't affect you. Yudrin. Yudrin, you think it doesn't affect you, that you're watching, true crime stories on YouTube or something violent at night. But then you wake up in the morning, you feel bad, and you can't even hardly remember what you watched the night before. But it wasn't something uplifted. It wasn't a Dharma teaching. It wasn't, you hadn't laid down your head down at the tree, the base of the tree, and gazed up at these wonderful figures. Your mind had gone negative, and even if you don't remember them, your dreams and subconscious rumblings that continued throughout the night. And then you woke up going, why do I feel I can't face this day? I feel so depressed. I'm kind of frightened. What's going to happen today? And you think, oh no, shows don't affect me. Totally not, right? Okay, this is not, pull yourself together. Yudrin, pull yourself together, my friends. And please practice before you go to sleep. And then first thing you wake up, you think about Buddha, you picture Buddha, you picture Guru Rinpoche or Tsongkhapa, whatever your tradition is, and, say one mantra or say one prayer. Start your day out right. Then you get up and start the thing over again. You go to the bathroom and you go right to your practice. Now, in Nyingma and Kagyu lineages, probably in modern days, maybe the others as well, our Nanda practice involves exercise. Yeah, they're like, have you been to a group exercise class lately? There are these things called burpees. There's some horrible thing where you get down on the ground and do something and really hard to get up, and you get up, you do it over and over again. Well, actually our ancient prostration practice of bowing all the way to the ground, going all the way out flat and coming back up again, and doing it over and over and over again, it's very similar. It's a very good exercise. It's a positive way to start the day. It's cultivating humility and devotion. And so it's really, really good to do some prostrations. If you're like me and you're too fat and you got a bad back because you're sitting on your fat ass all the time, you don't have good posture, or some good reason, maybe you have a good reason, do prostrations, just one. Do one prostration for a month, and then next month maybe you can do 2. We all seen those YouTube inspirational videos, haven't we? Where the person who, progresses along the way with exercise, but it's good for you, and it's good for your attitude and everything in Dharma as well as in life. Or you can circumambulate. In the Buddhist cultures, I'm thinking about Tibetan or Bhutanese culture particularly. In the middle of Thimphu, Bhutan, I've been there. There's a memorial stupa that Dudjom Rinpoche's son took charge of and built there. Late Nama Nicola looked after it. It has, apparently I didn't get inside, tremendous, wonderful murals inside. Big stupa. What's a stupa? It's like they call it a reliquary. It contains relics of great masters and many other inside. There are mantras and all kinds of magic, wonderful stuff. And these stupas are very powerful. It's very powerful to circumambulate them. We do it clockwise as Buddhists. And the people of Thimphu, they get up before dawn. They're working people. Pull yourself together. They get up before dawn. They're working people. And they walk silently around the stupa. They aren't socializing. And there's women there doing prostrations. I didn't see any men there. There must be men that do prostrations also, right? They're doing their nundra in the morning at the stupa. We need stupas in cities here. But in the meantime, you can set up a statue of the Buddha, holy text, on a nice table, and you could walk around instead of doing prostrations. And this brings up devotion, brings up your energy. We're bodhisattvas. We have to put energy into what we're doing. We're not lazy layabouts. Even if we follow Dzogchen, where there's a path for lazy people, supposedly, that's a part-time job. You still have to be a bodhisattva, as far as I'm concerned, and raise yourself up. Pull yourself together. So I'm going to now turn to Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche's advice, briefly, before we say goodbye, because I promised I would. And I saw this on Instagram because I was not following my own advice. So this is the thing. Don't get up and start and have your coffee watching Instagram or watching Facebook or whatever. Don't do that. Put yourself together. Practice instead of doing that. But somehow, at some point in the day, I saw something on Instagram and it was uplifting. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche was talking about the points of mind training for bodhisattvas. And he said, he talked about you need to give up your native land. And this, you can imagine, a traditional society where your role was spelled out. Either you were going to do this or you're going to do that. If you're a woman, you do this. If you're a man, you do that. And you have a family. It goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. And feuds where people have committed crimes. There's no cops, maybe, back in some areas of Tibet. The old Tibetan government before the Chinese took over was bunch of fat cats sitting in Lhasa. They didn't provide any services out in the hinterlands. So they just took people's tax money. And then out of the frying pan into the fire. Then the Chinese took over, and it was just as bad, if not worse. Worse, actually. The Cultural Revolution, way worse. So there'll be feuds, murders, revenge, like gangs, And there was a great gang. What was his name? Gompo? Namgyal? Was that his name? Somebody can tell me. In eastern Tibet, just ravaged, had a gang, and he just decimated, killed people, murdered, raped, stole everything. Oh, my mic is falling down to view. Isn't that nice? And so there were terrible things happen. And so you have this, what does Dilgo Khyentse say? So you have all these emotions of attachment, hatred, and obscuring ignorance that pervades both attachment and hatred. These three poisons that we talk about all the time in Buddhism are most active in relationships you establish with family and friends in your own homeland. So that's why it was very important for people to leave their town, their community, and go elsewhere when they were serious about practicing Dharma. Most of us Americans already left our hometown, gone elsewhere. So it is all too easy at home for the protection of those to whom you are attached and the increasing of their wealth and happiness to become your main preoccupation. Is this your main preoccupation? Am I calling myself a Buddhist and my main preoccupation is to increase my wealth and that of my family and friends and make them all happy to hell with everybody else? I got to pull myself together if that's the case. So if you feel any hesitation or at all, Dilgo Khyentse said, in this constant pursuit of ordinary goals, it is simply about how to best achieve them. Should you continue whatever you are doing or turn your efforts in some new or more profitable direction? So we can watch all these YouTube videos about how to get rich and change our lives for the better so that we and our families can be happy. But do we care about others? Do we really care about others equally to ourselves and our families? This is a good question we need to ask ourselves all the time. You end up engaging in meaningless activities without end, frittering away what's left of your precious life. This life is going to end at any time. We learned that in the last year. Perfectly healthy people who weren't old people in poor health. Some of them died anyway of COVID. Recently, a friend of mine, it's sad to say, it had a cousin of hers just in the last few days. So sad. They had a house on a hill and a river, and it never had been there for decades and never had any problems with flooding, and the mudslides swept through and swept them out to their death. They thought they were perfectly safe. So people who don't have cabins along rivers, every time we get in a car, there's a chance that could be our last moment. So this is not to be a bummer. It's just like, how are you going to make the most? How am I going to make the most out of this life? I got to pull myself together, because otherwise I'm going to be swept up in the cycle of death and rebirth, and I may not have this kind of human body again, this intellect, all these senses that I have, the capacity to understand the Dharma and intentionally carrying out the path, practice, study, and so forth. This may not happen again. So I need to pull myself together and grab this chance while I can. Okay. He said in closing, in truth, even if you live to be 70 or more, which was almost amazing in those days, you can never hope to overcome all your adversaries and totally gratify your close ones. So it's, in addition to being inadvisable from a Dharma point of view, looking out for you and yours and pursuing those kind of worldly goals exclusively is pointless, because you can't predict how it's going to come out in the end. You're never going to, the more you think that you have enemies, you do have enemies. The more you decide, if you never decide to put your enemies down there close to that refuge tree with Buddha or Guru Rinpoche and include them in your practice, if you never bring those together, those polar opposites with adversaries, you certainly will never overcome them, because there's this karma, cause and effect going on and on and on, not just in this lifetime, but in every lifetime. So, and satisfying people who are by nature in the desire realms, ordinary worldly people like our relatives and friends and people we aspire to marry and so forth, they're never going to be satisfied. The whole nature of the beast of being human is having unsatisfied desire. Never getting to an end point. you know. And all the talking we do, as Lamatarchin Rinpoche used to say, you'd think with all the talking we're doing all the time that our jaws would have worn down. If they were made of metal, they would have worn down to nothing by now. But somehow, through the miracle of the human body, we still have a jaw from all, even after all the stupid talking we do about ridiculous topics and sharing feelings. Feelings are afflictions. Of course, we want positive feelings of love and devotion and caring. That's good but those aren't most of our feelings, right? We need to pull ourselves together. All right, so eat moderately, spend time in solitude, have few needs and wants. Don't dwell on all this emotional storytelling we do with ourselves. Drop it, and drop our unwholesome habits. Our conduct needs to be better than regular people. Remember what Dudjom Rinpoche said? In closing, I'm going to repeat it. To put it simply, from the moment you enter the sacred Dharma and become a Dharma practitioner, your inner attitude and outer conduct should far surpass those of the ordinary, mundane person. All right, so long scolding of myself, and it's nice to see you, Tenzin Punzuk. Thank you. Let's pull ourselves together, and next week maybe I won't be so ferocious. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.